Most Americans think a car is supposed to die at 150,000 miles. It is not. That belief did not come out of nowhere, and that is exactly where the trap begins. Behind a parts counter, day after day, the same pattern keeps showing up. Modern engines do not just collapse because metal suddenly gives up. They fail because owners are never taught the basic maintenance rules that actually keep a machine alive. And today, that is the whole point of this story. 6 rules. Nothing fancy. No gimmicks, no dealership upsells, no nonsense, just the kind of advice you would give your own family if you wanted their vehicle to push past 300,000 miles without drama. The promise sounds almost too simple, but that is what makes it powerful. These 6 rules cost about $65 at the entry level, and they do not rely on expensive diagnostic appointments or shady repair shops putting their hands all over your vehicle. There are no complex digital tools here, no theatrical dealership routine, just practical maintenance done on time before a small weakness becomes a financial disaster. And one of those rules, Rule 4, centers on a $15 chemical that claims to wipe out what often becomes an $800 dealership invoice. But before that, you have to understand how the entire system is presented to drivers in the first place. The setup is brutally effective. A dealership can charge $8,500 for a catastrophic engine replacement, and the average owner has already been guided into the exact conditions that make that bill possible. That is the part many people never see. Modern vehicles are sold with the language of convenience, but really, the convenience often hides dependency. Maintenance intervals get stretched. Owners are told oil can last 100,000 miles. Fluids are described as lifetime fluids. Automatic transmissions are framed as permanently sealed boxes, but the reality is far less comforting. The failure often arrives right around 65,000 miles, and that number matters because it lands about 5,000 miles after a factory powertrain warranty expires. That is when panic begins. The warning light comes on, the engine shakes, the tow truck gets called, and once the car is sitting in a dealership bay, the smiling service advisor has all the leverage. That moment is not just mechanical, it is psychological. The driver is anxious, scared of a roadside breakdown, scared of being stranded, scared of the size of the bill that is about to land. And really, that fear is part of the structure. Heavy plastic engine covers hide what used to be visible. Physical dipsticks disappear. Coolant intervals in the manual sound reassuring. But the effect is the same. The owner becomes less informed, more dependent, and more likely to accept whatever number appears on the final estimate. That is how a person gets pushed into another long loan. Not because they are careless, but because they were never shown what to watch before the failure started building. So the first rule begins with the one fluid no engine can live without: oil, the blood of the engine. The claim that oil can safely remain inside the engine for 100,000 miles is presented like a modern convenience, but the argument here is that it becomes destructive long before that point. Internal components are spinning at about 3,000 revolutions per minute, and all that metal depends on a microscopic oil film to stay separated. We are talking about roughly 0.01 inch of protection. That is not much margin. At around 7,500 miles, the chemical chains in the oil are said to begin collapsing under heat and shear, and when combustion temperatures reach about 4,000 degrees, the lubricant no longer behaves the way it did when it was fresh. The molecules break down, protection thins out, then metal starts striking metal. And that is where the simple answer comes in. Replace the oil every 5,000 miles. Not when the marketing campaign says it is convenient. Not when the dashboard politely recommends it at the far edge of the interval. Every 5,000 miles. Use full synthetic motor oil carrying the proper API standard. That is the recommendation. Fresh synthetic oil is supposed to hold up far better under severe heat, keeping the hydrodynamic lubrication barrier intact. In the telling of this rule, the barrier is about 0.001 inch, a microscopic shield standing between normal wear and internal destruction. The practical move is almost boring in its simplicity. Walk into an auto parts store. Buy a 5-quart jug of synthetic oil for about $35. Pair it with a premium original equipment manufacturer oil filter. That modest service, done on schedule, becomes the difference between ordinary maintenance and an $8,500 engine bill later on. Then comes Rule 2, and this one shifts from lubrication to breathing. Because an engine, in this version of the argument, does not just need fuel. It needs the right balance of air and fuel, and once that balance goes off, damage starts building quietly. A dirty engine air filter restricts oxygen flow. That restriction pushes the engine away from the ideal 14.7 to 1 air to fuel stoichiometric ratio. When that happens, the engine runs rich. More fuel, less air, and the consequence is not just wasted gasoline. Raw liquid fuel starts washing down cylinder walls, stripping away the oil film that should have been protecting them. Then the piston rings begin scraping against surfaces that are no longer properly lubricated. Dry metal against dry metal, slow wear at first. Then real damage. That is why the instruction here is so specific. Replace the folded paper engine air filter every 15,000 miles. Not eventually, not when it looks terrible. Every 15,000 miles. Buy an original equipment manufacturer filter. Open the plastic clips on the airbox by hand. Remove the old filter. Insert the new one. It is a $15 move, maybe one of the simplest tasks on the whole vehicle, but the claim is that it restores oxygen flow immediately and helps preserve the cylinders for the long haul. That is the rhythm of this entire protocol, really. Small costs, basic actions, no theatrics. But when ignored, those same neglected items become the beginning of very expensive stories. And this is the larger point that keeps echoing underneath everything. Cars do not usually die in one dramatic instant with no warning. They are pushed there gradually, through delayed oil changes, through clogged filters, through maintenance intervals stretched until chemistry gives out. That is what makes the first two rules matter. They are not glamorous, they are not exciting, but they attack the failure path at the beginning, before heat, friction, and contamination start stacking up inside the engine. And that, more than anything, is the difference between a machine that feels worn out at 150,000 miles and one that keeps going far beyond that mark. The third rule goes straight into the fuel system, and this is where a lot of drivers quietly lose performance without realizing what is happening. Cheap discount gasoline may seem like a harmless way to save money at the pump, but the problem, according to this argument, is what it leaves behind. Fuel injectors are built to spray a precise microscopic mist. That mist matters. It is the difference between clean combustion and a mess building inside the engine. But when gasoline lacks the proper detergent package, carbon begins forming where it should not. Little by little, those injector pintles get contaminated, and once that happens, the spray pattern changes. The injector stops atomizing fuel the way it was designed to. Instead of a fine mist, it starts dribbling fuel more like a broken garden hose. That change may sound small, but it has consequences. Combustion becomes less efficient. Fuel delivery becomes uneven. Deposits increase. The engine loses the clean, precise behavior it needs to stay healthy over long mileage. So the instruction here is simple and strict. Use top-tier detergent gasoline. Look for major stations like Shell, Chevron, Exxon, or Mobil. The reason is not branding for the sake of branding. The claim is that these fuels are required to contain stronger detergent packages, and those detergents help scrub injector nozzles clean over time. In other words, what you pour into the tank is not just fuel. It is also part of the engine's cleaning system. That is Rule 3, and really, it is about preventing the injectors from turning a controlled combustion event into a dirty mechanical compromise. Then comes Rule 4, and this is the centerpiece of the whole script. The direct injection carbon trap. Modern engines increasingly use gasoline direct injection, and on paper it looks like progress. Fuel is injected directly into the combustion chamber. Efficiency improves, power can improve. But the trade-off, the one that matters here, shows up somewhere most drivers never see. In older systems, fuel passed over the intake valves, and that fuel helped wash them. In direct injection engines, that does not happen. The intake valves stay dry. That is where the trouble begins. Microscopic oil vapors move through the intake path and bake themselves onto those dry, scorching hot valves. Not all at once, slowly, layer after layer. Over time, those deposits harden into thick carbon crusts, and the description here is vivid for a reason. These are not soft smudges. They are described as diamond-hard, baked-on carbon masses that keep growing until airflow is disrupted and performance suffers. At that point, the dealership has a solution ready. Mechanical carbon blasting, often using crushed walnut shells, for around $800. And that is where this rule claims the owner can fight back without stepping into that expensive service bay. The chemical named here is polyethyramine. That is the weapon in Rule 4. The claim is that this nitrogen-based chemical survives the brutal heat of combustion, somewhere around 4,000 degrees, and attacks carbon at a molecular level. More specifically, it is described as forcing a phase change, vaporizing solid carbon deposits so they can be broken down and removed through the system. That is the science-driven promise inside the script. The actual procedure is just as important as the product. Pour the full $15 bottle into an empty gas tank, then fill the tank with top-tier detergent gasoline. After that, drive the vehicle hard enough on the highway to push the engine beyond 4,000 revolutions per minute. The heat, the flow, and the chemical action are all supposed to work together. And the rule says to do this every 5,000 miles. That timing matters because it mirrors the discipline introduced in Rule 1. The whole philosophy here is consistency. Not waiting until the engine is stumbling badly. Not waiting until a service advisor starts explaining carbon cleaning packages. Doing the small intervention early, regularly, and cheaply. But really, what makes this rule so compelling in the script is not just the product. It is the way it is framed as a direct rejection of the expensive dealership fix. The idea is that chemistry, applied on time, can interrupt a predictable failure pattern before it becomes a repair invoice. Then the attention shifts from the engine to the transmission, and Rule 5 goes after another phrase drivers have heard for years: lifetime transmission fluid. According to this script, that phrase is one of the most dangerous myths in the modern vehicle world. Automatic transmission fluid does not last forever. It operates under heat, pressure, and constant friction. Around 220 degrees Fahrenheit, that fluid is already living a hard life. And over time, the friction modifiers inside it break down. Once those additives are depleted, the transmission's clutch packs start slipping. Slip becomes heat. Heat becomes accelerated wear. Then one day, the box that was supposed to be sealed and carefree starts shuddering, slipping, or failing outright. And the bill for that failure is no joke. A dealership can charge around $4,500 to rebuild a damaged automatic transmission. That is why the instruction in Rule 5 is so firm. Change the transmission fluid every 50,000 miles. Fresh fluid restores the hydraulic behavior the transmission depends on. It restores the friction modifiers. It helps cool the clutch packs. It helps preserve the internal pressure needed for clean shifting. In this telling, a simple fluid drain costing around $80 becomes the barrier between routine maintenance and a four-figure transmission disaster. Again, the pattern repeats. A modest scheduled service is framed as a way to stop a much bigger failure before it ever gets momentum. What makes Rules 3, 4, and 5 feel connected is that all of them target systems most drivers do not see. Fuel injectors, intake valves, internal clutch packs, hidden parts, hidden chemistry, hidden wear. That is why so many owners assume the vehicle is fine until one day it is very much not fine. But the reality argued here is that the damage starts far earlier. It starts when low detergent fuel leaves deposits behind. It starts when dry intake valves become carbon magnets. It starts when transmission fluid slowly burns through its protective chemistry while the owner is being told everything is sealed for life. And really, that is the emotional center of this part. Not panic, not rage, recognition. The realization that the expensive breakdown is often the last chapter of a problem that was building for tens of thousands of miles. These rules are trying to interrupt that timeline. Use better gasoline. Clean the system with polyethyramine every 5,000 miles. Replace the transmission fluid every 50,000 miles. 3 actions, none of them glamorous, none of them loud, but all of them aim directly at the hidden wear that shortens a vehicle's life long before the odometer reaches 300,000 miles. The 6th rule goes after something many owners ignore until it is far too late: coolant. People are taught to think of coolant as something that just sits there, year after year, doing its job in silence. But really, that silence is exactly why it gets neglected. The script calls out the 150,000-mile coolant myth directly. arguing that factory coolant does not remain healthy nearly that long. After 48 months, the chemical condition of the coolant begins to change in a dangerous way. The alkaline additives that protect the system get used up. The pH level drops. And once that happens, the fluid inside the radiator and engine is no longer protective. It starts turning acidic. That shift matters more than most drivers realize. When coolant becomes acidic, it does not just lose efficiency, it becomes corrosive. And the corrosion described here is galvanic corrosion, the kind of electrical and chemical attack that slowly eats at metal from the inside. Aluminum engine blocks become vulnerable. Internal water pump, impeller blades begin to wear away. Heater cores, especially the fragile aluminum ones buried deep inside the vehicle, can corrode until they fail. And when that happens, the damage is no longer cheap. Replacing a corroded heater core can cost around $2,000 in labor-heavy repair work. That is why the instruction is so exact. Perform a complete coolant flush every 48 months. Not when the fluid looks suspicious, not when overheating begins. Every 48 months, fresh coolant restores the proper alkaline balance and helps stop that internal corrosion before it quietly destroys parts you cannot even see. Then, the script delivers one final survival hack, and it focuses on a component many owners almost never think about until the car suddenly will not start or stalls at the worst possible moment: the electric fuel pump. Hidden in or near the tank, that pump runs hot. The figure given here is 150 degrees of continuous heat, and it survives because the surrounding gasoline acts as a thermal buffer. In other words, the liquid fuel is not just energy waiting to be burned, it is also cooling support for the pump itself. That is the part most drivers never hear. They think driving on low fuel is harmless. Maybe just a habit, maybe just an inconvenience. But this argument says it is much more than that. Once the tank drops below 1/4, the pump becomes more exposed. Cooling is reduced. Heat stress rises. If the vehicle is repeatedly driven in that state, the pump and its wiring can overheat and eventually fail.